This is the Farm RPG Podcast with your host, Bellagon.
Thanks for that intro, Bones, but you didn't quite get my name right. Try again next time, maybe, or maybe not. We'll see. This week's podcast, we have a staff spotlight with Ryber. Following that, we have a mechanics deep dive with Coderanger. And this week we're talking about ancient coins, how to get them, and all about their uses. Following that, we've got a 2-for-1 player spotlight with two players who sent their questionnaires in written form. So I'll let you hang on and see who we talk to there. Before anything else, though, we're going to kick off with our question and answer segment. As promised, we put up a form on the library podcast page where you, the users, can submit questions, and we will do our best to get answers to those. We've had a question come in from Mikotos, who asks, the time-honored question, would a horse enjoy a bouncy castle? So I grew up with horses. We rode them. Personally, I didn't like horses because, well, let me rephrase that. I liked horses. I liked riding them. I didn't like taking care of the horses. I was super allergic to the hay and just all the dust and that around the horses, which never saved me from having to muck the stalls and haul hay and stack it. So mixed feelings. But anyway, my suspicion is a horse would not enjoy a bouncing castle because I think their host would probably go through it and put a hole in it. However, I've got good news for you. We don't have to rely on my expert opinion and speculation. We have someone we can ask. You may be familiar with Charles Horsington III, one of our famous town folks who's given a couple quests out there. Just so happens he's in the house and we can ask him. So, hey, Charles, welcome to the show. All right, so first of all, have you ever been on a bouncy house? Don't lie to me. I've seen those incriminating photos. Tell the truth. There you go. See, that wasn't so hard. All right. Now that we know you've seen one, did you enjoy it? Hey, we can't talk like that. This is a PG show. Clean it up. No, we can handle the truth. The truth. All right, and there you go. That's the answer, straight from the horse's mouth. All right, it's time for another staff spotlight. And with me today, I've got a very special guest. I'm going to take a stab at saying your username. Is it Ryber or Rybar?
Ryber.
Ryber. There we go. You'd think by now I would know that, but I don't.
It happens. No worries.
All right, Rybar. So we have our standard questionnaire we're going to go over. Pretty straightforward. And then if we have any probing questions, I'll let you know. But how did you learn about Farm RPG and how long have you been playing?
So I saw it on a recommended Reddit post for iOS gaming. It sounded kind of cool, and I downloaded it on my phone. It was just an iOS app. It was the first time I saw it. And that was June 7th. So I've been on for over half a year now. And I've been on every single day since then. Not that I'm, addicted or anything, but it's fun.
Scratch the right itch for you.
Absolutely. No, it's definitely my kind of game. It's not really a totally idle game, but it's idle with work to do. So it's exactly my kind of app for sure.
We talked a little bit about what kind of a game Farm RPG is. If you had one sentence and one sentence only, how would you describe Farm RPG?
It's a interactive, slightly idle farming game that is so much more than farming.
I like that. Somewhat idle.
It is. You've got to wait for things, but there's a lot to do while you're waiting for other stuff to do.
Absolutely. All right, now we want to know, where did your Farm RPG username come from?
So I've used this for lots of different online services and games for a lot of years. It's actually kind of a combination of parts of my first and last names, and it just kind of sounds like cyber, and I'm an IT guy, so it just sounded cool, so I just decided to run with it.
Ryber cyber rhymes together.
Exactly.
Number, I guess.
Exactly. So yeah, I use this for some D&D campaigns for my name for a couple of games, and I use it for a lot of stuff.
We have a lot of farm RPG players that are also D&D players.
There's kind of an interesting crossover there. Yeah, it's not a bad thing. I like the crossover there.
I had a player ping me earlier this week from RPG Crossing, which is a site where I do play-by-post Dungeons and Dragons since about 2015, who I've known since about 2015, and he said, "Are you the same Belligan that's on RPG Crossing?" I'm like, "Yep." I guess you can brag you've known me longer than anyone else.
One and the same. That works. It's always fun to meet up with somebody that you've met somewhere else in this lovely online world we call the internet.
It's a big place, but it's not always. Sometimes it's a small world.
It is. It's funny how that works.
Well, in addition to Farm RPG, what other games do you like to play?
I sadly don't have a whole lot of time for gaming these days, but when I do, it's mostly on my Switch. I put an awful lot of time into Hades lately, and I've been going through Dragon Quest. I just started that. I know it's been out for a while, but I am also the guy who has had Breath of the Wild since it came out and has only played about 15 minutes of it. So, Stardew Valley. I'm a big JRPG fan, so any of the Final Fantasies, I've played them all on probably every platform they're on. I'm a big JRPG fan, so that's the majority of what I do when I've got time to. I've also put probably an unhealthy amount of time into 7 Days to Die and Skyrim. I had a group, my D&D group. We used to have a survival Sunday. We'd play survival games online, and I've probably got a few thousand hours into 7 Days to Die.
Well, we'll probably date when we're doing this recording, but the Pixel remaster of Final Fantasy VI, I think, just launched today.
It did. I haven't picked that up yet, but I probably will have to.
I pre-ordered the whole series, but I haven't installed it yet, so we'll get there at some point.
That looks pretty good. The font looks a little tiny, but other than that, it looks pretty solid. Although I do have a complaint about Final Fantasy VI, the Pixel remaster. The train, the scene with the train, when he
the suplex
with the train on the remaster, the train lands on its wheels. And that's just wrong, because in every other version, it lands upside down as it is supposed to, but they did it wrong in this, and that just makes me twitch.
I remember seeing some kind of articles that they're pledging to fix it, but I don't know where that is going.
They need to. That's a travesty that should not stand.
All right. Well, in addition to which way a train lands if you toss it in the air, what's one thing you wish that the Farm RPG community knew?
That's a tough one. I think the one thing the Farm RPG community really does need to know, whenever there's a dispute or something that happens in chat, and any moderation action is handled there, there's always more to the story than what you see in the chat. There are private messages going on. There are other chats going on. It's more than just what you see on the surface. And I think that very clearly all of the Farm RPG staff has the game's best interest at heart. And I know there have been comments about power-hungry mods and everything, but there's more to the story than what you see. And while some things may seem like they're harsher than they are, there really is a reasoning behind the things that happen. I think some people in the community don't seem to give that benefit of the doubt, and I think that is a problem. I think trust that there's more to the story than what you see. That's probably not the greatest answer there, but I think that's one of the biggest things that I see is there's more to the story than what you see going on just in the chats.
Yeah, it's a really great point. I think sometimes as moderators, we got to be a little bit careful about preaching about that too much, because I think just about everybody on staff I've talked to's had a similar point of, we really have the game's best interest at heart. We aren't targeting anyone specifically, and there's always a whole lot more going on than what the community sees.
Yeah, there's definitely more than meets the eye there.
Like Transformers.
I gotta love a Transformers reference whenever possible.
I don't know if our younger listeners will get that or not, but our older ones certainly will.
That's all right. They'll figure it out. Maybe we'll get some more folks to join the Transformers fan club.
All right. So other than being apparently our president of the Transformers fan club on Farm RPG.
Sure.
Tell us an interesting fact about yourself.
An interesting fact about myself. That's also a tough one because I'm not all that interesting.
Yeah, everyone says that and they're all full of crap. I don't believe it for a second.
Well, should I go with a farm RPG fact or just outside of farm RPG? Because for farm RPG, I would say since I joined as staff, I've kind of been the primary writer for the buddy quests. So all of your hate about the diamond can be poured directly into me. That's my fault. I apologize. I've done that a bunch of times, and thankfully most people have done that already, and they're cool with it now. But oh, by the way, spoiler alert. But outside of that, as I said, I'm an IT guy, and I've just kind of always been fascinated with computers, technology, all that fun stuff. So that's kind of how I get hooked into stuff like, Farm RPG that I've put entirely far more hours than I have into anything I've ever played, I think.
That's because you never played Titan Conquest or some of Firestream's other games prior, I assume, right?
I actually started Titan Conquest after I started Farm RPG, and I've spent a decent amount of time in there too. Not nearly as much as Farm RPG, but
not as much. Yeah,
it's the game's just the infrastructure he has for these is just it's addictive for me.
Well, that's everything on our questionnaire, but you brought up a point that if you don't mind, I'd like to maybe we can elaborate on a little bit regarding quests and quest writing. That has changed quite a bit since the quest system was initially launched. I was involved in writing some of the early quests, kind of before you and Force Path took over, and I remember
and Tenfu.
At one point, and Tenfu, yeah, Tenfu. I say Tenfu, you say Tenfu. Tomato, right?
It's all good.
Maybe we'll loop him in one time and make him pin down how to say it, and then we'll say it wrong forever afterwards.
It's a solid plan. I like that idea.
You mentioned Buddy and the Diamond, and I just remember the Jill's cosplay quest. Originally, that was written requiring a diamond or two for her costume, and I got so much hate from the community from that we pulled it out.
It's amazing how attached everybody gets to their super rares. I understand it, but trust the quest.
It's important. So, looking at the quest you've written, what's something maybe that you've gotten the most flack or pushback on that you've tried to do?
That's a good question. Obviously, the diamond issue was kind of a hot button topic, but I think trying to not really push back, but the hardest thing I think about writing quests is just trying to keep everything within the lore that we have with the game. And there are some people that obviously don't really read the quest, and they just kind of see what they need to get it, and
hey,
turn it in.
Careful now. You're making fun of me.
I'm not making fun of you.
I'm so guilty of that. I'm so guilty of that.
Come on, I'm talking to the guy who sang the Read the Quest song. So, by the way,
I should read them.
That is the best video, by the way. But I think trying to keep the lore going and trying to find new directions to take that while kind of continuing the storyline. I think that's it's kind of a fine line to walk, but I think it works. It works well. I think we've done pretty good with that. It takes some effort sometimes to try and tie things together, but and of course with buddy quests, he's kind of just the comedic relief for the most part, so not that big of a deal with some of his quests. I mean, for crying out loud, he made a carousel for a horse to ride, so sometimes he can be a little goofy, but it's I think that's the fun part, is trying to figure out how to expand the story and kind of keep it all tied together.
Yeah, and that has evolved a lot as well because the lore wasn't really canonized when we initially did quests. So I know one or two of my wrote, we have people playing D&D and watching reruns of Back to the Future, but that doesn't quite fit the canon and setting that we have now. So maybe you could just give us a quick rundown of really what the setting is for Farm RPG.
Well, I think we're still trying to work on that. I mean, we've got, very obviously kind of an older time period, but we do now have we have Roomba that's a regular resident who is a sentient robot. So we're kind of a little all over the place. I think we're kind of just on the cusp of merging sci-fi and fantasy a bit, and I think just kind of combining those into the setting, and as I said before, there's way more to it than just farming. It's got a lot more detail, and if you read through the quests and kind of see the story behind it, there really is a decent amount of depth there, and we're trying to expand that and make that better every time we add another quest or a quest line.
It helps develop the lore. I think we kind of decided at one point it was 17th century steampunk, heavily influenced by what we talked about earlier, Final Fantasy VI, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a fairly common influence among Firestream's games.
Definitely. He's mentioned it's his favorite game that he plays at least once every year.
Yes. No, he does the replay at least annually.
All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap this up. Ryber, thank you so much for taking a few minutes of your busy day to come and talk to us and to let the community get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to see the podcast up and running, and hopefully we can grab some new players from the podcast being out now.
We'll see how that outreach goes.
Yep, and thank you for your work putting this all together for us, too.
Oh, you're welcome. It is time for another mechanics deep dive. I am your host, Belogan, and with me is Coderanger.
Hi there.
So in this segment, we're going to dig into what's quickly becoming the third currency in the game, and that is ancient coins. So let's start off with the obvious question. How do you earn ancient coins?
Yeah, so there's two main ways. The first is exploring. This is going to be, for most people early on, this is their only source. You can earn them by exploring in either Blackrock Canyon or Ember Lagoon. They're fairly similar. Ember Lagoon is a little better. It's 191 explorers per drop versus Blackrock Canyon at 242. But they're both around the level of 1 to 2 OJ per ancient coin, which feels like quite a bit. Later on, you can start getting them from large chest 01s. Those are a very rare drop. But once you get the brown bear pet, he'll bring you 12 of those chests a day, which means 1,200 ancient coins. So quite a substantial jump in ancient coin earning power once you have all your levels to 99 and can afford the brown bear.
It's those bare necessities of life. Yep.
Oh, that one stung.
So currently I think it's in beta testing now. There's also daily chores that can reward ancient coins. And they won't be nearly as much as the brown bear brings, but soon that will be a common part, a common way for everybody to earn those.
Yep. Couple dozen per day generally, plus more for the monthly tier rewards.
So ancient coins are a little bit different than the other currency, silver and gold, in that they're actual objects that fill up your inventory. So you've got a cap on how many you can hold. And so that's something to consider when you're out looking for them. But once you have those, what can you actually spend those on?
Yeah, so the original place to spend them, and is still a thing, is Borgen Shop. So every Wednesday in game time, Borgen will come in from the wilds and set up shop and sell a handcrafted mixture of rare items. There's almost always going to be at least one runestone available. and usually some set of consumables, orange juice, nets, both, as well as just other rare items. As far as we can tell, it's manually set up, so any item in the game could potentially show up at Borgen's. Every now and then we'll get a troll item that's available for 99 million ancient coins that no one can buy, and it's just there to show off. But other than that, it's usually some mix of super rares, consumables, rune stones, or other rare items. We sometimes get stuff that's rare stuff that's being used in content that has dropped recently.
So let me just drop a quick lore nugget on Borgen, and I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. Borgen is a carryover from Titan Conquest, where he does a similar type of thing where he shows up weekly to deliver special weapons and bikes in that game. And there, Borgen was a reskin of, I think you say Zur from Destiny RPG. So really, it has come from Destiny to Destiny RPG, which was later reskinned as Titan Conquest, and now is part of Farm RPG.
That tracks. Zur is similarly cryptic.
Ways they work. All right. In addition to Borgen, where else can we spend that currency?
Yeah, so we've gotten new ways to spend them over the recent months. So the next one is the Wheel of Borgen, which is a pretty simple. You click, you get a random segment, and then whatever that segment is, you get some random number of items. The spins go up in cost every time you do them. So your first spin every day is free, and I'd highly recommend that everyone remember to do that, because free resources, who's going to complain? But after that, the spins go up in cost, either 5 or 10 AC for each spin, depending on if you have one of the perks. And then the third way you can spend them is the Vault, the newest. There, it's not part of the sort of main game of the Vault. The main game is a sort of mastermind or Wordle-style number puzzle. But if you need either extra guesses or you want to do a whole new vault to get more rewards every day, those cost ancient coins.
We might want to do a deep dive on the vault specifically. I'd posted a video on it, and we still see a lot of things that come up as common mistakes as players are trying to solve it. But that's a bit off topic.
Definitely go and check out the vault strategy video on the Borgen MWO YouTube channel, or you can find it under video tutorials in the library.
It is there, and even since making that, I've come across new traps that people are running into that I feel like probably should be addressed, but that's all right. So we have these three methods of places to spend AC. Which one really gives us the best return? What are we going to get the most out of?
So that's a complicated question, as they all are. So the simplest one that we can look at is the vault. If you are at max farming level determines your vault silver rewards. Max level gives 40 million for a successfully solved vault, and it's 350 AC to get a new vault. And almost all vaults are solvable within 5 guesses. That's if you have the farm supply perk for it. In my experience, I've had about half of them solvable in 4, and almost all solvable within 5. So if you have the perk, and we'll just sort of gloss over some of the stuff if you don't, that means that 340 million silver for 350 ancient coins, that's about 114,000 silver per coin. So that gives us a baseline of, can we do better than that? And usually the answer is no. So sometime Borgen will have consumables for very cheap. He's in the past had orange juice, I believe, as low as 2 AC, in which case almost certainly, if you have a good Whispering Creek crafting loop set up, doing drums or bows or garnet rings or some mix of them, almost certainly 2 AC for an OJ will make you much more than 200,000 silver. So, but that varies every week depending on what Borgen brings, and you may not always want to wait for the end of the week if you're going to overflow. If you're doing your chores every day and you've got a low inventory cap, as Borgen mentioned, these are real items, not like silver and gold. You cannot have more than your inventory cap of ancient coins. So that brings us to the wheel. And how much do you get for a wheel spin? And this is where it gets complicated, because there's multiple levels of randomness as well as multiple perks that change the answer. We already talked about the wheel spin cost decreaser perk that just cuts the wheel cost in half. So obviously, if you have that perk, it's twice as good per ancient coin if you're spending half as many of them. But there's two other perks. There's one that just gives a flat increase to the number of items you get. Unfortunately, it's hard for me to say how many that is because I got that perk immediately, so I don't have any data without it. So I don't actually know how valuable that perk is. It looks from just sort of talking to people, I'm guessing it's somewhere around plus 10 or plus 15, but it's very difficult to tell exactly. We've also got another perk that fortunately tells us the percentage, which is rare in this game, 15% chance to give you a big increase, which means that the number of items is boosted by 100, and that appears to cap out the bonus. So as far as I can tell, the way that wheel spins work, each different item or each different category is equally weighted. So each of the segments on the wheel is equally weighted, roughly. Each different segment has a different base average drop. So the number of apples that you get on average is different than the number of OJ that you get on average. But they're all pretty close. They're all sort of in the range of 15 to 20. Ancient coins and materials is a bit higher, but they're mostly around 15 on average. And this is with that extra items perk. So the base is possibly somewhere around 10 instead of 15. Every spin that you do gives +1 average to all later spins. So if this is your 6th spin for today, you're getting +5 to the average number of item drops per day for that spin. So, roughly speaking, so some other folks actually have done the math. I believe Maddox was one of the people that originally contributed this. I'd have to go dig through Discord. If you have the half cost spin, your first 10 spins or so on the wheel each day are relatively high profit, usually over the 100K limit. So if you don't have the perk, that'd be your first 5. Beyond that, it gets fuzzy because it's random and it's difficult to get a lot of data because a lot of people don't do that many spins per day. They don't have the brown bear bringing them an endless supply or seemingly endless supply of ancient coins, or they're not in beta and they don't have the daily chores yet. But probably after that point, it becomes less profitable. But it does give you items instead of silver. So if you're interested in items for masteries, it may still be worthwhile. Silver doesn't buy you masteries. So even if if buying an extra vault is technically more profitable in terms of silver, that may not be what you're looking for.
Yeah, spinning the wheel is fun. I know we have, at the time of this recording, we have a few staff members who've already spun it over 1,000 times. I'm barely getting around 250 myself. So they had put together a library page to give you some advice about how to talk to your mods about responsible wheel spins. So I'd encourage you to check that out.
Oh, yeah. Spin the wheel, baby.
But,
yeah.
Spin the wheel!
I guess the last question we can ask when it comes to spinning the wheel.
Spin the wheel!
There are techniques that help in video games to get better results. Like in racing games, it actually helps if you turn the controller in your hands to make your car turn better, right? So what can we do to get that wheel spin that we want?
Spin the wheel!
Have it in your heart. You gotta, believe in the heart of the wheel. Really, it's going to be highly randomized. So you just got to keep going until you feel like you've gotten what you want out of it. I will add that so some of the segments are pretty clear. Apples gives apples, fishing nets gives fishing nets. The two that are complicated, so gemstones gives a bunch of different gemstones. Those are useful for crafting rings, not super complicated. Materials gives a sort of seemingly, it's not random, but it's an otherwise undocumented mix of crafting materials: leather, glass, rope, twine, stuff like that. Useful for crafting. I will note, though, for a lot of endgame players, some of those they are likely to be capped on at any given time, depending on how fastidious you are about keeping those materials up. So if you're voiding stuff, it's not helping. This comes up for me a lot. I usually leave rope at maximum at any given time. So if I get rope off the material segments, it's not going to help me. But then we've got the random segment. That can contain any mailable item. And there are some real good ones in there, especially if you also hit that 15% plus 100 proc. People getting, 100 apple cider, 100 gold catfish. Treat Bag 02 from the Halloween event is still listed as a mailable item, so you can get 100 of those. They are the only bulk source of some of those particularly rare items. So if you can't get either afford or have the level for the capybara, the wheel is, because now you can exchange goldfish in the wishing well, the wheel is actually a decent source of goldfish if you really do not like manual fishing. It's not a quick source, but it'll get you there eventually.
That's awesome. I like that term, the heart of the wheel. I can imagine after this episode gets posted, it won't be long before I get someone giving me lyrics for a Heart of the Wheel song saying, do this one next, Belligan.
I look forward to listening. I hereby transfer all such intellectual property, and all false is Belligan's. This is not, I bear no responsibility for any such song.
You heard it here. He will get credit whenever it happens. All right. Any parting words on ancient coins for us?
I think that just about covers it. Always look out for new sources. Always keep a few extra. Oh, there is one other use for ancient coins that we didn't talk about because it doesn't come up a whole lot. Ancient coins in the wishing well is the only source, the only repeatable source of wax candles. It is not an item that I think a lot of people stockpile. And we all know that our beloved help request writers absolutely love to find a rare item that a lot of people do not have stockpiles of and use a lot of them. So think about if you should maybe use one or two every now and then of your daily wishing well throws for an ancient coin, just for a little chance of getting some of those wax candles.
Wax candles. We had that as a community goal recently. And in the beta test, some people had a chore that day asking to donate 50 items, which caused a conflict of interest there. I've only got one or two. How am I supposed to toss 50 into this chore? So that has been addressed and overhauled at this point, but it was a fun quandary. All right. Well, thank you so much, Code Ranger, for coming on for a little bit and talking to us about ancient coins.
Glad to be here.
Spin the wheel!
It's time for another player spotlight. And as promised and advertised, if you're not comfortable with having your voice recorded, or if for some reason you actually are mute, we've had players that have been that way, or you just don't have a way to record, we will happily take your answers from your questionnaire and we will read them for you. So to help me with this today, I have Augie here with me.
Hello, again.
So Augie is going to be reading the questionnaires as if she were the player who sent these in today. We're going to start with a questionnaire sent in from Metal.
Lowercase METAL.
That is Metal. So for Metal, first of all, how did you learn about Farm RPG and how long have you been playing?
Metal says, I was scrolling through Reddit one day. I think it was the 3-month-old announcement that I came across. I love how Firestream does his self-promos too. I read the comments and decided to give it a shot since it seemed easy enough. It was in late August, I downloaded it and fell in love at first sight. Granted, I was only playing it for 30 minutes every day, just planting crops and using the auto-crafters, but I progressively got more and more addicted until I realized there was a web version on the computer. Now I'm basically on for around 12 hours a day, sometimes just in the background. Gotta get those nets. LOL. Ah, yes, the auto-crafter days.
Reading that response, I saw auto-crafter and totally read auto-clicker. I'm like, uh-oh.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah.
The word auto just pings a red flag for Belligan.
Yep, it does. It does. All right, next question for Metal. In one sentence, describe farm RPG.
Metal says farm RPG is like starting a new life, but with other people starting new lives as well. It's like a small town of 100,000 neighbors. I like that.
And we do. Yeah, that's good. We do have over 100,000 users. Not all of them play all the time, but
Actually, I heard it was up like near 120 now.
may very well be. Yep. It's grown really fast. Contrast that to Titan Conquest that's 2 or 3 years old at this point that just hit 100,000 players last week.
Yay, Titan Conquest.
I should quit talking about it. This is the new baby, not the old one.
Or Titan Conquest.
Next question for Metal. Where did your farm RPG username come from?
Metal says it's an abbreviation for Metal Wings. Not because I like metal music, although Slipknot is the best band ever, LOL. This has been my username in games since forever. It actually came from a small game I used to play in 2017 called moo.io. I was one of those skilled players who spent hours playing it without getting bored. Anyways, there was an accessory called Corrupt X Wings, which is a reference to a YouTuber called Corrupt X, who used to consistently make moo.io gameplay. He was the biggest YouTuber in the community. I was hoping that my name would be recognized and the devs would make metal wings in my tribute, but of course it didn't happen, lol. Yeah, it's really different background to a username. It sounds to me like you might be our Corrupt X for Farm RPG.
It could very well be.
I wonder what moo.io is. I wonder if it's like one of those you're the circle and you have to eat the other circles games. That's usually what those are.
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm not going to look it up right now. We'll keep moving on. All right, next question for Metal. Besides Farm RPG, what games do you like to play?
Metal says, on a regular basis, I play Roblox since I'm a scriptwriter for games. I made a lot of friends off of it, and I've been playing since 2008. It doesn't get boring since there can be an infinite amount of user-created games on the platform, and some made decent money off of scripting. Another game I love is Undertale. Undertale's a story with kindness at its root, one that actually offers you a chance to not murder your way through everything in your path without it penalizing you. Not that this is necessarily a bad thing, mind, but it is nice to have even one alternative. It's one where no character is portrayed as evil or irredeemable, just as someone with good and bad qualities. I also enjoyed the way it called me back to the RPGs of my youth, Earthbound and Chrono Trigger, and made things feel new again.
Roblox, I'll have to ask Metal if he's played Dead Bushia's game on Roblox.
I feel like I've heard so many different things about Roblox because, again, middle schoolers, they play it so much, and there are these like little side games within Roblox, and they talk about them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's the same thing in Minecraft, but I just kind of let them do their thing.
Yeah, it's a little different than Minecraft in that you don't have just a base game you play. It's only the side games, really.
Pretty cool.
All right, let's move on. So next question for Metal. What is one thing you wish the farm RPG community knew?
Metal says, don't get too addicted to this game. It'll ruin your sleep schedule. Also, don't give up on that Runestone 11. See past the corn jail. That is good advice.
Some good advice there for sure. Yep. We need sleep anyway. We talked about that in the meme contest.
Yeah.
All right, last question for Metal. Tell us an interesting fact about yourself.
Metal says, the most interesting fact about myself is that I'm fluent in 4 languages ever since I was 16. My mom is from France. My dad is half Caucasian, half Middle Eastern, so there's a lot of diversity in my family roots. I learned English through my TV programs. My native language is French, and I took Japanese and Arabic classes at 15. Oh, and I know Python and learning Java at the moment. That's so cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't count programming languages as spoken languages, very different skill sets, but it is cool.
Well, no, just I think it's cool that like English is not a lot of like more of our players than I think most realize English is not their first language, and the entire game is in English. And like,
Yeah.
it's like somebody like Jackie, one of our other mods, is not, I don't think is native English, but you wouldn't know.
Right.
And it's just like, it's so like very cool to me that you can just talk in another language, like, and know what you're saying. I admire that.
It is fun. Yeah, my wife's from the Czech Republic. And so we speak Czech at home, but our kids don't speak it. So it's kind of nice because we can have a private conversation in front of them sometimes.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Metal also says, thanks, Belle, for the opportunity to be on the podcast, by the way.
All right. Well, thank you, Metal, for filling out our questionnaire and sending that in. We were certainly glad to hear from you, and we'll be glad to feature you in our player spotlight. Now it's time for another player spotlight. And once again, we have a player who has sent in their questionnaire. So with me is Augie, who's going to be reading the answers for Ace of Hearts.
Hello.
First question for Ace of Hearts. How did you learn about Farm RPG and how long have you been playing?
Ace of Hearts says, I found Farm RPG in my recommended games while I was browsing through the App Store. It seemed interesting, so I decided to give it a shot. I downloaded the game in early August, but I started late September because I never found the time. Since then, I've played Farm RPG every day for the past 5-ish months.
5 months.
Another point for the App Store team.
Awesome. There's been a lot. Seems like everybody's been the App Store or Reddit posts that we've talked to so far.
Yeah, it's just interesting.
All right, next question for Ace of Hearts. In one sentence, describe Farm RPG.
Ace of Hearts says, Farm RPG is an incredible and surprisingly deep, in the sense that there is a lot more to it than I initially expected. Text-based RPG with an outstanding community and developer.
There's that community theme. It's really important. It seems to come up in every answer.
Yeah, and I agree.
All right, next question for Ace of Hearts is, where did your Farm RPG username come from?
Ace of Hearts says, my username, Ace of Hearts, comes from a card game I was taught as a small child. I was 4 years old when my cousins decided I was old enough to learn it, and I still play it with my family today. It's called Tien Lan, or 13 in English, and it's sometimes called the national card game of Vietnam, where my family is from. The Ace of Hearts is regarded as one of the most powerful cards in the game for its versatility and rank, though it is not the highest ranking card. Aces are also considered very strong cards in several other games I like to play, such as Texas Hold'em Poker and Euchre? I don't think I said that right.
Euchre? Yeah, I'm not sure how to say that one either. Exactly. Our apologies, Ace of Hearts, for our ignorance.
I tried, though.
Well, that was a good answer that leads into the next question for Ace of Hearts, which is, besides Farm RPG and some card games, obviously, what games do you like to play?
Ace of Hearts says, I play Wild Rift, Brawl Stars, Clash Royale, Exponential Idol, Skullgirls Mobile, Legends of Runeterra, and I recently downloaded Cookie Run Kingdom. The game I play most, though, is definitely Farm RPG. Exponential Idol sounds like...
That last point's the important one.
Well, yeah. Exponential Idol does sound like something that I would enjoy. Watch number go up.
All right, next question for Ace of Hearts. What is one thing that you wish the Farm RPG community knew?
Ace of Hearts says, I'd like the community to know that this is a video game, and thus probably not the place for debates such as politics and non-kid-friendly topics. On the other hand, actual game discussions are too often seen as arguments or debates, and there are always people piping up with, let's move on from this argument, despite the topic being relevant to the game, not actually an argument and not prohibited by the code of conduct. From a gameplay standpoint, I wish people would read the quests. Not only are they actually helpful sometimes, they're also well written and often pretty funny. That is an interesting point of view.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
Well, I guess like from our end of it, we've seen situations get so heated previously from the same topic, like something like the community center,
Mm-hmm.
that now if we even just see it start to start up, we're like, we're not doing it today.
Like, careful. Yeah. I could tell you early on in the game, I think before he was put on staff, Honk and I got in a huge argument about what was better between what's the farming perk that duplicates things, double harvest or quick growing. And it got to the point where we're both kind of upset. And I'm just like, all right, let's move on from it. And so we kind of avoided that topic afterwards in the future. Every time it came up, we're like, we're not going to start down this again.
We're not talking about it.
So, not talking about that one again. And it was funny because going back and looking at it, we both had valid points, but neither one of us had the full picture at that point until we kind of dug in later on and did more analysis on it.
More numbers.
And there might be a YouTube video about that somewhere in MW Bellogan's Farm RPG playlist on YouTube.
I also want to point out at the end of this one, it says, I wish people would read the quests.
I knew that was coming.
As you should.
Like, did you catch that one, Belligan? Yes, I know. I should read it. Next question for Ace of Hearts is, tell us an interesting fact about yourself.
Ace of Hearts says, my favorite musical artists are Matt Mason and Glass Animals. If you're into indie or alternative rock music, give them a listen.
All right, there we go. Some shout outs for some indie alternative rock musicians. I may have to check them out.
I may also have to check them out.
All right. Thanks again, Ace of Hearts, for sending in your questionnaire. We certainly enjoyed reading over your answers and putting you in our player spotlight.